Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Wrestling vs. the World podcast. You all enjoying your day? Sweet. If not, well, then what the hell ever. It is time for yet another History of a Championship episode, and tonight we are covering the history of the SmackDown Women's Championship from its debut in 2016 up until its rebranding in 2023. So we're going to kick off August 23rd, 2016 episode of SmackDown Live. The championship was unveiled, and it was revealed that within the 6 women on the SmackDown Women's roster, they're going to compete in a 6-pack elimination challenge at Backlash, being Alexa Bliss, Carmella, Naomi, Natalya, Nikki Bella, and Becky Lynch. Winner would be the inaugural champion, and Becky Lynch would win the 6-pack elimination match in order to become the inaugural SmackDown Women's Champion at the Backlash event. This reign for Becky would last nearly 3 months before losing it in December at the TLC pay-per-view to Alexa Bliss in a tables match, thus making Alexa Bliss a new champion. Now, this reign for Alexa Bliss would last about 2.5 months. She would then drop it at the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view in a singles match to Naomi in February 2017. But unfortunately for Naomi, 9 days later on the next episode of SmackDown Live, just a little over a week after the pay-per-view, she would be forced to vacate the championship due to a knee injury that she suffered in her title match at the Elimination Chamber, due to her not being medically cleared to defend the championship within 30 days. So the championship was immediately vacated. And later on that night, a new champion was crowned as Alexa Bliss would defeat Becky Lynch to become a 2-time SmackDown Women's Champion, and thus the championship was no longer vacant again. So Alexa Bliss's second reign with the championship would last 40 days, before then losing it at WrestleMania 33 and yet another 6-pack challenge match against challengers Becky Lynch, Carmella, Mickie James, Natalya, and the eventual winner Naomi, who made Alexa Bliss tap out in order to win the championship. So Naomi, now in her second reign as champion, this reign would last about 140 days, before then losing it at SummerSlam a little later on that year in a singles match against Natalya. So Natalya, now being a champion for the first time in a while, she would hold this SmackDown Women's Championship for also almost 3 months, just like we saw with Becky Lynch earlier, for losing it on the November 14, 2017 episode of SmackDown to Charlotte Flair, which would then see Charlotte take Natalya's spot going against Alexa Bliss, who was a Raw Women's Champion at Survivor Series, and the whole Raw SmackDown brand supremacy concept that was going on. So then Charlotte, with this reign as champion, would last almost 150 days, so a little under 5 months, for then losing it on the April 10, 2018 episode of SmackDown shortly after WrestleMania 34, when Carmella cashed in her Money in the Bank contract on Charlotte to become the new champion, thus making it the very first time in history where the women's Money in the Bank contract was cashed in on. So Carmella would hold this championship for a little over 130 days upon her successful cash-in, for then losing it initially what was going to be a singles match against Becky at SummerSlam, but became a triple threat when Charlotte, you want title match Flair, got inserted in the match, and she got the victory over, got the decision in the match. So Charlotte was now a 2-time SmackDown Women's Champion, and we remember what happened post-match. So Charlotte's reign as champion would last a little under a month, before then losing it to Becky Lynch at the next pay-per-view in September at Hell in a Cell in a singles match. So now Becky was a 2-time SmackDown Women's Champion, will hold the title a little over 3 months, so just a bit longer than her initial reign, for then losing it in a triple threat TLC match in December of 2018 at the TLC pay-per-view against Charlotte and the eventual winner, Asuka. So now Asuka was in her first reign. The title reign would last about 100 days, before then abruptly losing it on the March 26, 2019 episode of SmackDown to Charlotte, which meant that Charlotte, who was already announced to be a part of the WrestleMania main event against Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch, would also be bringing the SmackDown Women's Championship into the match and putting it on the line in a winner-take-all triple threat. So Charlotte's reign would last just under 2 weeks, and in the triple threat match between Becky Lynch, Raw Women's Champion Ronda Rousey, and SmackDown Women's Champion Charlotte Flair, Becky would get the pin on Ronda under shady circumstances due to a bit of a sketchy finish, but would win the match to become both the Raw and SmackDown Women's Champions at the same time. But despite the fact she was holding both championships, they were not considered unified. So with Becky, she's now a 3-time SmackDown Women's Champion, which she would hold the championship for 41 days, for then losing it back to Charlotte Flair in a singles match at Money in the Bank. But then this reign for Charlotte as her 4th reign as champion would not even last a day, because immediately afterwards, Bayley would cash in her Money in the Bank contract that she just won that evening to become the new SmackDown Women's Champion for her first ever reign. So this reign would last precisely 140 days, before then losing it to Charlotte, right back to Charlotte, at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view in October. But then 5 days later, Bayley would regain the championship on the October 11, 2019 episode of SmackDown, and this was the one where Bayley ended up changing her look. She was already a heel by this point, because she technically turned heel already during her first reign as champion, but then by this episode of SmackDown, she changed her persona, changed her look, and the inflatable flailing tube men and all that nonsense. So she became heel during her first reign, but then changed her look by this one. So Bayley would then hold this championship for a record 380 days, for over a year here, before losing it in October 2020 at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view in the Hell in a Cell match against her ex-best friend Sasha Banks. Now, one quick thing to note here as well, I almost forgot, that during this reign as SmackDown Women's Champion, the historic reign, Becky for a bit was also a double champion, because in the summer of 2020, she would also simultaneously hold the SmackDown Women's Championship and the Women's Tag Team Championships with Sasha Banks back when they were still a cohesive team. So Bayley was a rare double champion during all this. So now Sasha became champion at Hell in a Cell. She would hold the championship for 167 days. Then at WrestleMania 37 Night 1 in the main event, she would lose the championship to Bianca Belair. So Bianca is now in her first reign. She would hold this championship for 132 to 133 days. But then SummerSlam 2021 hit. Initially, she was supposed to defend the championship against Sasha Banks, but for unknown reasons, the match got canceled. And instead, it seemed like she was going to defend the championship against Carmella instead. But then when Becky returned and took out Carmella, she got granted an immediate match against Bianca Belair after she agreed. And in fast motion, Becky, within a matter of seconds, easily pinned Bianca Belair to become a 4-time SmackDown Women's Champion, also turning heel in the process. So Becky, during this fourth reign, would her fourth reign with the championship would last 62 days until the October 22nd, 2021 episode of SmackDown, which I covered last time on the history of the Raw Women's Championship, when we had the championship trade-off with Charlotte, where both women were in part of the draft, were drafted to the opposite shows. They were supposed to trade championships, but Charlotte was not following the script, so there was tension there. But as a result of this segment, Becky's reign as champion would end with the SmackDown Women's title and we'd start with the Raw Women's Championship. So, Charlotte, after being handed the championship, was now a 6-time SmackDown Women's Champion. So this title reign would last almost 200 days before then ending at WrestleMania Backlash in May of 2022 when she lost the championship to Ronda Rousey in an I Quit match. So Ronda's run as champion here would last just under 2 months, because then at Money in the Bank, after successfully retaining the championship against Natalya, Liv Morgan would successfully cash in the Money in the Bank contract on Ronda Rousey and pin her to become the new SmackDown Women's Champion. Now, at the time, Liv Morgan was part of the Raw roster, but upon her winning the championship, she was then sent over to SmackDown in order to keep the championship on her. So Liv, during her first title reign, would last a little over 3 months, but then at Extreme Rules in October 2022, in an Extreme Rules match, she would pass out while being put in an armbar and lose the championship right back to Ronda Rousey. So now Ronda, as a 2-time SmackDown Women's Champion, she would hold this championship for a little under 3 months, and then on the December 30th, 2022 episode of SmackDown, Charlotte Flair returned, immediately challenged for a championship match, because she's allowed to, and would defeat Ronda Rousey to become the new SmackDown Women's Champion for the 7th time. So, of course, this championship reign would last a little over 3 months, precisely 92 days, and at WrestleMania 39, Night 1, she would lose the championship in a pretty highly acclaimed match against Rhea Ripley. Now, despite this, Rhea was on the Raw roster for the women's division, and was also kept on that roster despite the 2023 draft, and in June of 2023, the SmackDown Women's Championship, which was, as just mentioned, still on Raw, would be rebranded as the Women's World Championship, which is still being presented on television to this day. So yeah, unlike the Raw Women's Championship, we did see a little bit of iffiness, because we saw a championship vacancy, we saw a rare double champion period here in terms of holding a singles and tag championships at the same time, and some short reigns, Money in the Bank cash-ins, and stuff like that. Now, when it comes to this one, I'm going to ask this before I get my answer. Let me know in the comment section below, when you see the SmackDown Women's Championship, who's the female wrestler that immediately comes to mind that you associate with this championship? And as much as I am not a fan of this woman due to her booking and getting put in the spotlight and shoved down our throats, I gotta say the woman that I think of when I see this championship is, of course, Charlotte Flair. Maybe it's because she's held the championship more times than anybody else. Who knows? But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think about the SmackDown Women's Championship? And as just asked before, when you see this championship, who is the woman that you most associate with this championship throughout its history? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed today's episode, folks, please remember, leave a like, subscribe with the bell, turn on here on YouTube, comment what you thought below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thanks for listening, folks. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace out, and good day, everybody.